Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. My name is Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show has a sponsor, Cheshire Impact. This is a team that's here just to help you maximize your use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam! Now, my guest for today is awesome. We met at a Flip My Funnel conference, and one of those quick little convos turned into this lengthy one talking about our buyers and really understanding who they are. I would go so far as to say she is a buyer whisperer. She is a marketplace Yoda, researching, analyzing conversations with your buyers and understanding them better to just and we've always talked about this, that the more you know your buyer and the challenges they face, the better your marketing is. So I'm happy to introduce her. She's also a speaker, presenter, Harvard Business School, MBA, and president of EastSight Consulting. Parmelee Eastman, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for that great introduction.
Yeah, well, you
That
deserve
conversation was great that we had. Just sat down and kept on talking.
Yeah, and it was almost like marketing therapy because I was able to share with you about my different buyers and
Yep.
how they come from different directions and they have different concerns. And it sounded like you'd heard that conversation before and you were helping me to able to get my head around it. So I'm happy to have you here because the theme is around getting to know your buyer, understanding them. And we have this maturity model for marketing automation called the CSI, and it's the very first step. The first thing you got to do is understand them. Then all the other work makes so much more sense. If you're going to nurture them, you know who you're going to nurture. You're going to know what you need to say. You're going to know all these other things. If you're going to segment, all this stuff relates back to your buyers and just understanding them better in your marketplace. So I'm happy to have you here. So I want to do, this is a tradition we have. I want to pass you Thor's hammer
Yep.
and receive the hammer. Now smash a myth. Is there any bogus strategy you've been hearing around getting to know your buyer? Any kind of craziness you've heard that you just want to set the record straight right away?
Well, one thing I want to do is I do a lot of research for people, but you don't need me. I can
Okay.
explain how to do this
Yeah.
and you can do it yourself. You have to be careful about who within the company is actually doing the interviewing of your
Yeah.
customers.
Okay.
But with that caveat, you don't need me. And I got
Okay.
a great book that I can recommend. I'll do that later. So
Okay.
just it's so important because what I find is there's no one myth that exists about buyers, but there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Okay. What kind of
There's a lot.
misunderstanding do we have?
Well, one person within an organization will have talked a lot to customer A
Yeah.
and generalizes about that conversation. And then
Ah.
somebody else has talked to customer B and generalizes. So I find that having some good information about customers through actual interviews really sets everybody straight. It
Okay.
doesn't mean the people inside are wrong. It means that they have not looked at kind of the totality of the
Right.
customer base, and having actual interviews really helps get everybody on the same page
Okay.
and
Yeah.
able to move forward faster. That's
Makes
really the
sense.
benefit of talking to customers in a win-loss program.
Got it. It makes sense too because we all bring our biases. I like to just assume that whatever I think is cool is what my buyer thinks is cool. But we do. We bring our own biases in, and we may not
Exactly.
be our buyer. Like if you see I used to do this. I'd hate on a bad commercial. I'd see a really bad commercial, like that's the shittiest commercial I've ever seen. But you know what? It wasn't for me. Like I wasn't the
Yes.
target demographic for that. It was for someone else. Now, if that particular demographic target or whoever that potential buyer was thought that that was a bad commercial, then it is a bad commercial. But I wasn't it. So I could see how even my own bias, and we bump into this too. Like if the CEO thinks that is or isn't a good campaign, maybe he or she knows, or maybe doesn't know, because is that person your buyer? I could see
Yeah.
how that sort of these general conversations, the VP of sales thinks this, VP of marketing thinks this. No one really actually knows. It's almost like you have that gut feeling and then no
Yes.
one's really resolved it.
And it doesn't mean their guts are wrong. Their guts are just not complete and not reconciled.
That
That's
makes
all.
sense.
That's
Okay.
what I'm saying. So I always try to say, hey, Mr. Client or Ms. Client, that's a start, but let's keep going and get some more hard information and then you can think about it.
Got it.
So that's really what we're doing here.
Got it. So how do we start? how do we approach this whole thing? I mean, boil the ocean. I'm getting nervous already. How do we? So what's like part one? Where do we start here?
So I always recommend that companies start with a win-loss program,
Okay.
and that is talking to the buyers that you won over and they made a decision to acquire your product or service,
Okay.
but also talking to the prospects that made a decision for another solution. So you can see why people are choosing you, but you conversely you can see why people are not choosing your solution. That
Ah.
what that does is help you understand what what people really value. The people who chose you, maybe they're not choosing you for quite the reason you thought.
I believe it.
Yeah, or they do like, your features A, B, and C, but D is also really important. And conversely, maybe your competitors have a great feature F and you haven't really worked on it, but there's a segment
Mm.
out there that really wants it. So what you're trying to do is figure out which are the right customers for you. And conversely, you're trying to figure out which prospects should I drop? Should I
Yeah.
not pursue very long? Now that's always a good question because maybe you could talk, good salesperson. And by the way, I was a good salesperson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. So I understand. I'm not trying to criticize sale. I'm just saying salespeople are like, I got to make this happen. That's my job.
Right.
But what you really want to do is spend your time with the most productive accounts. So if you can figure out where you shouldn't be, that's really valuable. So if your product, and I have seen this in customers or of mine, say your product doesn't have foreign language capabilities, and you run across a prospect that needs that, say thank you very much. Have a good life.
Right. Don't.
Yeah.
It's not worth the time trying to fool or trick them or anything like that.
No, you
Yeah.
wanna go there, you wanna go find the people that don't need that functionality because you have a much better chance. So, it actually helps you define your buyer in the sense
Right.
of what features, what do I have that what segment of the market wants? And there's more than one segment. I
Right.
know that. The important thing is to understand which segments you're gonna win on.
Right.
Uh-oh, I see a little note saying unstable internet, but I'm gonna
Ah,
keep talking and keep my
no
fingers
worries.
crossed.
I'm here. I'm learning. Hey,
Yeah,
you brought up a good point about who should I drop? And sometimes we learn more from the losses than we do from the wins, or sometimes we learn more from the bad dates than we do from the good ones. This
exactly.
is what I really don't want. And it's funny you mentioned that sales is often like, look, I'm going to sell whoever you bring to me, but that's almost like that. That's like new level sales or newbie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you mentioned the sales training, and I want to hear about yours. But when I had some sales training too, and it was kind of fun. I was selling tuxedos, or signing people up for tuxedos at bridal shows, right? So I liked the job because it was pretty decent money. I got to wear a tux. Like, hey, look at me. They called me a tux model. I don't, anyone watching this on YouTube is like, really? So I get to wear a tux, and it was kind of a salesy thing. And so I'd get people to walk by, and I'd say, hey, do you want to sign up to get your tux at this particular place? And I remember just wanting to avoid rejection. If someone would say like no right up front, I'm like, okay, I know you said no, but like this and this and this and this and this. And it wasn't until I was driving up to a show up in Bangor, Maine, and I was with his name is Bill. He was a CEO, and he might still be the CEO, but he was sort of teaching me. He was great at sales, and he was saying, one thing you do is you actually spend a lot of time on the people that are like no's right from the beginning. Like you're trying to convert them. Like like you're on a quest. These people aren't a fit. They've ruled themselves out, and yet you're still talking to them for like the next 8+ minutes or however long it is. Meanwhile, there's other people walking by that maybe you could have addressed who actually are good fits. And I remember when he told me that, it was sort of a game changer for me because I spent a lot of time on those other people when what I should have done is been more clear about my buyer. And
Exactly.
if they said no, just move on.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That is exactly my point. I had a client that was like that. They
Yeah.
had developed a lead program. They were getting lead after lead, but after doing a win loss for them, I said, "You guys spent a lot of time on companies that were not appropriate. You're the Cadillac of
Yeah.
the industry. You got a lot of bells and whistles and a price to match. But
Yeah.
you were spending time on little guys that didn't need that. They just,
Yeah.
needed a little commuting car, not a big truck. So I said,
Right.
and the VP went, "Yeah, you're right. That's what we did." So that's a really important point.
Mm,
If you can see what the people liked about you versus the competition and what other clients, then you're going to know, hey, here's my buyer. I'm not going to spend the 8 minutes or 8 months or whatever it is
right.
on people who are not likely to buy. It doesn't mean all of those wouldn't have bought, but you're increasing your percentage win rate so much by going to the people who are more likely to buy.
Right.
So that's where win loss can really help you
Okay.
in terms of defining who's the buyer, what features, what messages, because it's not just the features, it's kind of the message that you're giving as well. So when they say, I like this feature, it'll help me keep up with my competitors. You go, okay, so let me think about how they worded that because that's the way I need to word my marketing messages and
Got
what
it.
I need to give to sales to
So
say,
so it sounds like how they say it too is important. So let me take a
yes,
step back here. So we're going to do this win loss. We're going to look at people we've won over. We're going to talk to them. People that we've lost, we're going to try to talk to them. We got a list here. So I've got my list. That's easy. Salesforce report. Now what? Do you go into that with like a preset type of questions? I heard features and messages. Do you have like a golden
yes.
list that you try to ask people?
Well, each list is different. So I sit
Okay.
down with my client and or talk over the phone, whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and we develop a list. And we're trying to understand, first off, how did you develop the list of companies that you looked at? We know that buyers are going online. They're doing an awful lot of research before they even contact
Yeah.
a potential solution provider. So we need to understand where our buyers are going to find information. So then we get that and we ask them, what are the criteria you're using? Who's making that decision? And we go through the decision process. Now, we all know that people make decisions on emotions,
Yeah, I was just gonna
but
ask you. Yeah.
yeah, but they're going to tell you that they do X, they're making the decision on X, Y, and Z. And so you need to find out, you need to probe a little bit about, okay, you say these features are important to you, but what's really going on? How did you end up feeling comfortable with the decision that you made? So we've got a set list of questions. This is not a survey, it's a conversation, and it's
Mm,
not what I would call statistically significant. That's not what we're doing here.
got
We're
it.
finding guidance, we're finding direction. Um, you could use this information to do a survey if you want, but this is not a survey, but it's very qualitative. We get off the phone and we write down as near as we can exactly what was said. We don't want to record. That might turn people off or make them uncomfortable.
Right.
But we do capture a lot of the wording, especially when it's important.
Right.
So that means that you can compare all the conversations because you're answering the same set of questions. Then you kind of get into value. Did you get value for your decision? And
Mm,
value, then you can kind of ask about price. And I know that's a sensitive issue, but if you get into value, then you can make a question, the next question kind of about price. Price is not usually a deciding factor.
mm.
People say price is. If you ask a
That's true. They do,
salesperson,
don't they?
yeah, ask, hey, hey, salesperson, why did you lose? Price. We were priced too
Price.
high.
No, it's not
No,
price.
no. As a matter of fact, I have a friend who did a very extensive, very good win-loss program,
Okay.
and he always talked to the salespeople before he talked to the customer or
Oh,
the
interesting.
prospect.
Yeah.
And he said the salespeople who won knew why they win. The salespeople who lost didn't really know why they lost.
Ah,
And it's pretty obvious once he said that. I went, yeah, because the salesperson who lost wasn't that involved, didn't have good relationships,
right.
etc.
Right.
So it's good to have ask salespeople, what's your perspective? Don't want to step on your feet, step all over you in terms of getting to talking to your client.
Yep.
But I said before, you don't need me to do this. But it's not good to have the salesperson asking these questions.
Why did you dump me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't you like me? Yeah, that's
Give me a
really,
reason why we broke up.
yeah.
Yeah. It's not you, it's me. You know, that's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not ready for a serious relationship, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
person gets married in 6 months, but we
Yeah.
all know that.
Right.
Well, that's when you have the salesperson do it. That's the kind of conversation you have.
Totally.
So you want to have somebody from corporate who doesn't have a direct relationship. It's going to be a little objective, and that person
Totally.
can call. So that's why I'm saying that's the caveat that I have, and that's why you want to ask the salesperson, but you don't want the salesperson to do the interview. And you can get some good information. Companies are used to getting these kinds of calls, so
Yeah.
even though when I do it, I don't say you know I'm from XYZ company. They'll kind of assume that I was from one of
Right.
those
One of
competitors.
them.
Yeah, one of them, but that's okay because it's kind of understood. I'm going to provide some feedback, and
Oh, that's
that's
cool.
just, yeah.
Do you get better feedback if you're from the victor, or do you can call either way?
I
Like,
call either way. I I,
interesting.
I get equal feedback because they don't know who I'm calling from.
Right.
But I have seen where customers call, my customers or people from the company call, and they do get good feedback. Like I
Right.
say, it's just because buyers expect to be able to talk to those people and provide some feedback.
Right. It's
Not
probably
everybody.
yeah, it's
Not
probably
everybody.
easier to provide positive feedback to the company itself, you know. Why
Yeah.
did we get married? It was because of your eyes is a lot easier than why did we break up? No, no, no. Tell my best friend why we broke up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could
Exactly.
see how you can have those conversations with people in your third party and your conversation,
Yes.
you're nice about things, and so the pressure's off and they'll feel good about helping out some other people. But there's one thing you said though, ask sales first. I love that because either way you get the data of why we think we lost it. Why we think we lost it was this. When we talked to the customer, they said X, and so
Yeah.
you get to see if there's any sort of correlation between y exactly like you said, like your
Yes.
friend who said, the ones we won, yep, the answer was the right one for the most part, but when we lost, it was price, but no, it was actually because they hated the sales guy.
Yeah. So, but I don't look on this as being negative for sales. Don't present it
Good
that
point.
way.
Yep.
You're looking at trying to help the salespeople be more effective. So it's
Right.
really, you're just gathering information for sales training. Let's put it that way. So
Yeah.
it's never a negative. You got to be very positive about, we're going to help you win more business by understanding a little better where you should be and where you shouldn't
Good
be.
point. I don't know why my tendency was just to go burn somebody, but yeah, you're right. Like we're
No,
not here like, okay, we lost a deal. Let's learn from it. Let's instead of being
ex-
reactive, let's be creative about this response and learn more, think about, why this happened and what we could do differently. That kind of you need the
yes,
data for that type of response. One other thing you said was and I love this, people that one knew why, the people that didn't know why. It's
exactly.
so
It's like,
telling.
it's very, very telling. Yeah, maybe that salesperson wasn't paying that much attention to the deal or didn't
Right.
establish a good enough relationship.
Right.
Hey, these things happen. Or
So
it really wasn't a good fit.
right.
So that's why you need to look at it more broadly.
Okay.
Now, the other thing we haven't talked about is the fact that you also get a feel for the competitors and what are they saying. I mean, win-loss is not just about customers.
Okay.
It's about your competitors.
When does that come up? Because I've got questions like, where do you do your research? How do you shop? Did you get value? How about price? And is that the next question that comes up is
Well, who do you consider
who do you
and
consider?
why?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I went to I went to Cheshire and I asked them, but I also went to XYZ over here, and people I met at a conference or they were recommended. So you're looking at yourself versus the competition without
Right.
needing to talk to the competition. But that's really important because then you understand, well, what are they saying about
Right.
themselves and maybe about you? Because it's not just you selling to a prospective buyer, it's you selling versus other companies that are selling.
Right. And it's
You,
good to know those landmines that other companies are laying for you. Like, oh, they said your thing was X, or they said you were hard to use, or the
yeah,
implementation, horrendous, and all that kind of FUD that maybe the other team puts out there about you. It's good to understand, you know, was it effective or not? They put out this FUD, and would it be helpful to counter it, or is just ignore it because it's silly and the client
exactly.
gets it? Yeah, interesting.
Or is your message too much like your competitors and they're sort of saying, oh, I really don't see the difference between, this company and that company.
It,
That's
would that
really,
Would that be a reason to go on price then? Like
they
how how
might.
how would you discover that if somebody told, well, I didn't really know, I mean, you guy versus you guys, so I just went for lowest bidder. Is that what happens in those conversations, or
That happens occasionally,
occasionally?
but I'm just saying that that's one of the things that you're finding out,
Right.
that
Yeah.
you're finding out whether you have really come up with a differentiating message so that your buyers know what you stand for, what they can get from you versus making another decision.
Yeah, I love that.
So, so I do a lot of competitive research, like a competitive profile, or before a launch, what are the competitors likely to do? But I think this program is a great one to start out with, the win-loss, because you're understanding your customer as well as your competitors better.
Yeah. And you're
Yeah,
yeah, it's two at the same time as opposed to,
exactly.
and it's also it has the context of, was it even important? Because maybe you do some research on their website, you find out they're really saying that they're the easiest tool to use, but maybe the customers don't even care, or they don't even buy into that. So maybe you
Exactly.
don't respond, you don't need to respond to it because that's not even an issue. And you find that out by having the conversations.
Exactly.
I like that.
Exactly. So you're understanding what the customers really think of you and they really think of the competition. So what that does for marketing people is they can better do lead programs because they better
Oh, for
understand who they
sure.
should be go after,
Yeah.
better understand the messages that they can use. Salespeople better understand which deals they should go after. There's a reason why win-loss programs generally return about a 30%. There's a 30% return on investment.
Huh. So that means whatever money you spend on it, you're getting.
Yeah, 30% return. So that's pretty
Interesting.
good.
Interesting. Yeah, like a 30% bump into how well you're doing.
Basically you're seeing that your increased sales,
Yeah,
you're going to see a 30% bump
got it. Okay.
because you're going to be so much more efficient and effective. By efficient, I mean you're going to close them faster because you're going after the right people.
Yeah, I
By
was gonna say
effective,
that company you mentioned that was spending a lot of lead gen. I mean, you mentioned time, but also I'm sure they're spending gobs of money on the lead gen for those leads they didn't even want.
they didn't even want. Yeah. So I have another example of
Yeah, yeah.
knowing your customer better. So I had a company that was providing uh, database administrative people on a
Okay.
temporary basis, and they said, "Hey, our clients are small companies that they're not big enough to hire, so they want somebody on a part-time or temporary basis."
Yeah.
Well, I went in and I looked at it. I talked to some of their companies, and I found that many of them were larger and they were in remote areas, and it took them time to recruit. And they needed help in the meantime. So I said, you've got two sets of customers here. You've got two segments that you're going after. Make sure your messages align with both those segments.
Got it. No, so one of the segments was the remote thing, and
Yep.
then what was the other segment? Just the
Smaller
standard.
companies.
Okay,
Smaller.
so they did have a smaller company segment, but there was another one they didn't even realize. Was that
Yes.
okay?
And they didn't realize, in the technology field, sometimes it can take a long time to recruit
For
people with a
sure.
certain set of skills. We know that that's been going on for a long time. So that's just an example where you can find segmentation information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little did they know there was another segment lurking in the
Yes.
shadows that they probably had completely ignored in terms of the marketing and the collateral.
Exactly, exactly. And they had the data. I mean, they could have, but they didn't realize how big some of these companies were. Some of them were private, and they
Oh yeah,
and they
yeah.
didn't realize why, which is the remote factor.
Good point too around internal biases. Like, and I have mine for who I think my clients are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's these people, and this is why they choose us. And I've got my two areas. How much like does it interfere with you if I think I know what those two are for my clients and I tell you? Does that sort of bias you as well when you're doing the phone calls, or do you try to like take whatever company tells you with a grain of salt? Like, okay, they think it's small companies. Let's see if it actually is.
Well, what I do is I say I want um, I want the people to call from your database. So let's go through and let's take a look at your customer records, your win loss,
Right.
and let's pick some representative people. And if I look at that and I say, oh, okay, I see some big names here. So how did you get a client like GM, let's say,
Yeah. Right.
or this Bank of America? I say, well, small company, huh? So let's look at those together, and let me call and then find out.
Right.
Are you dealing with a small branch? So maybe your small
Yep.
organization model. Maybe it's a small organization as opposed to a small company model.
Right.
So I'm trying to work with you or any client on a representative sample from your records.
That makes a lot of sense, and I can see where it helps having your outside view on that, because um, a lot of times I have a list of clients that are really cool. A lot of companies have this where it's like the brag companies,
Yeah,
but oftentimes those companies aren't necessarily your best clients in terms of long-term clients. Like some of the best clients we've worked with, you may not have heard of them outside their industry. They're
right.
freaking rock stars and we love them, but they wouldn't be that other big name you've heard of. Whereas the big, like people can get distracted by, not necessarily the big name or the cool name or the cool brand that we've all, use in the shower or something, right? It's all, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I love that one. But then they might not even be a good fit. So it helps that you're getting samples of different ones and probably looking at like, who actually has spent the most or has, used us the most, not
ex-
just who's the biggest or who's the smallest. And
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And so you're going through and you're making sure that you're calling an equal number, approximately, of wins and losses,
Okay.
because you want both. You don't
How
want to.
many?
I would say that you need to have at least have 10, 10
10.
on each side. So I
Okay.
would say a program to start out. It's
Okay.
good to do it on a regular basis. So if next quarter
Ooh,
you,
I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so start out with a baseline, 10 each. Next quarter, do another 10 or at least five wins and five losses,
Yeah.
and then keep doing it because you want to see what's going to change over time. You're getting a snapshot
Right.
when you do the initial program. But if you can keep doing it, then you're going to see how things change. You're going to find out that your competitor X has now introduced um, five new languages and can be a real competitor.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
I think sometimes we put buyer research in the corner, like put baby in the corner.
yeah,
Okay, we'll do this once, or I got to a new company. I'm a brand new CMO. I'm going to do this thing once to learn about my customer. But I hadn't even thought about that. If you make it a recurring thing, if you make it a regular part, then you're just keeping what's the metaphor? Your ear to the ground, to the track,
yes,
your finger on the pulse. Insert metaphor here. You're staying in the loop on things as they develop. To your point, you'll find out about some crazy thing your competitor did. You'll find out about, is even the marketplace shifting from
exactly.
being focused on one thing to being focused on something else.
Well, that's right. And
Smart.
this research is basically historical. And, but you got
Oh,
to learn from
yeah.
history. You're using it to project forward. And so that's why as it gets older, you need to keep it up so that you see what's going on and you can respond to changes. I mean, it sounds great. New CMO comes in, does the research, sets up the plan, all set. No, let's face it, we're not set in this world. Things are changing too fast.
Right.
I mean, I love the technology industry. I've been in it since I graduated from the business school, and
Yeah.
I love it because it changes and it's also frustrating because it
You love
changes.
those changes. Yeah, I was gonna say it's also frustrating. Change is
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
the change is crazy. So you have to understand how it changes, keep up with those changes. So that's why you should always think about doing something on an ongoing basis.
Right. I love the quote you said too, or the concept that these are they're historical. This is not forward facing. People talk about you want forward facing metrics that indicate something's about to happen as opposed to lagging indicators.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a lagging research, but at the same time, you could then use it to project forward. And if you do it on a regular
Yes.
basis, you can stay closer to the actual change in the market.
And that's why we want to talk to customers that have made a decision in the past year.
Hmm.
So we're going to go from the most recent decision makers kind of back until we have enough of an idea of what's going on. But if you say, well, this customer made a decision 3 years ago, I'm not going to talk to them. That's
Yeah.
just, it's not really relevant anymore. You
Oh,
gotta
okay. Sorry. So you're saying don't. So the 3-year-old customer isn't as important because it's so
no
historical now.
it exactly.
Interesting.
So you want to start with the more recent decisions,
Right.
because you could have, in this industry, you can have a competitor that kind of appears in a
Yeah.
3-year period. I mean, that
Oh
is.
yeah. Totally.
Now, it doesn't mean that the 3-year-old customer isn't important, and maybe if they did a major upgrade, then maybe it's worth talking to them. But I'm just saying that, you know, I'd prefer, you really need to have the predictive value. You need to have some recent decisions.
Well, it's fair and it's tough because I think a lot of us, and I've done this before, you look at your historical sales or your historical database as like some sort of gold treasure stored up,
Yeah.
like the customers you had a decade ago. Well, they're in that database. I'm sure you're paying for that data storage. Like they're in there.
Yeah.
All their emails are wrong, but man, that's it's like you're a dragon hoarding that treasure, but it's not the case. I mean, things are
Oh,
changing. So, the treasures, what you have now, the customers you're with now, the ones that just
exactly.
recently made a decision because they're up to date. If your customer says they made a decision because they found you on Yahoo, it's probably an old record.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly. And I'm not saying that, there's whole different programs
yeah,
to go back, clean up your database, find out where the people are, see what the company's doing, and see if you could reestablish a relationship. But that's a whole nother type of project. I'm
yeah.
just talking about, I'm looking at recent information that's valuable for predictions and creating programs.
I like this. In my mind, I see allocating time and resources for this on a quarterly basis. I don't know if you do
Yes.
you know, like ongoing programs because I even myself when I was talking to you earlier, I was thinking of like it's like a one and done. Like let's find out about our customers and then we're good. We'll never have to do it again because we found out about them. But this is such a good point that not only do you find out about them, but they're going to change and morph a little bit. But also you want to stay hip with things and even that
Yes.
competitive intel and the pricing intel and it's good if you're going to do one. It's like the one thing you need to do strategically every quarter, say, to make sure
Yes.
your message is still on point. I mean, it makes so much sense. I don't Why do people not put more weight into this?
I don't think they don't think about it.
Yeah.
They honestly, a lot of, we've talked to some companies and they go, "Oh, you do a survey, like you do an online
Right.
survey." And we're
Ah,
going, "No, we talk to people. We call them up and we talk to them,
I know.
you know,
Yeah.
peer to peer." I mean, I don't have some recent college graduate making the calls.
Right.
I have experienced people, and so they can have real conversations. And that, a lot of companies just don't understand that that can be done. They don't understand that they can do it, and they don't understand that, third parties can do it and get a lot of insight. And you kind of go, "Oh, I'm working with a client now, it's $2 billion." And they're like, "Oh, you can call people, you can call our competitors, customers, and find out what's going on." It's like, it's not that they're dumb. They're not dumb. They're smart, but they haven't been
Interesting.
exposed to it. So that's why I'm glad to do this, because I'm spreading the word that this is
Oh,
possible, and it will help the people listening do a better job. Just think about someone doing interviews, in-depth interviews, not to correct everything you're thinking about, but either to
Right.
confirm it or expand it.
Right.
So
So
that's what I see.
so I get it. So 10 every quarter, we're saying, just putting a line in the sand, 10
Yep.
every quarter of your wins, but then also 10 of your losses. Because I was thinking, well, how am I going to know when someone else chooses something else? Well, it's because they didn't choose you. So go after the losses there. 10
Yep.
of those, 10 of those a quarter, 10 of the wins a quarter. That there's probably more information that comes from that than you can even handle in a quarter. So that sounds awesome.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, we've been talking about this from a marketing perspective, but I've talked about marketing benefits, sales benefits. The other people that really benefit, product managers,
Right.
product marketers, because you can kind of see, well, what are the customers saying they want that we don't have?
Right.
Because that's one of the things that you get out of this. And so product management can look at their roadmaps and say, maybe we better move this up,
Right.
or
You
maybe
know,
we could de-emphasize this.
right. De-emphasize this. And I wonder, ha- have you, of course, you probably this has happened all the time, but is there any example of, they thought it was X, but it was like completely different. It was like something totally different that came from that. You're having the conversations, and they maybe think, or is it more likely, like you said, it's more of an expansion of what they are. They kind of already have a sense for it, and then they just learn a little bit more about it. Like what
They
kind of
have a they have a sense for it,
okay,
and we're just finding out. There are always some surprises, but it's more like an expansion or a kind of a correction. They may know customers like this feature, but they may not understand why customers like the feature so
do you have any
much.
surprise stories? It sounds like that'd be really
I'm
fun
just trying to think of
to.
of one that's a good one. I'm thinking that where they just really didn't understand
Yeah.
some of the features that that were that were really attractive.
Right. Right. And I'm sure sometimes it's nuanced too, where it's, industry specific. So that company might have been like mind blown, but then you tell the story to someone else and maybe they don't get it quite as well. But yeah, I'm sure those things are happening. And what's kind of neat is you become, again, that customer whisperer where you're more in the know after talking to them. I wonder if that's part of it. Just, I don't know. They say, millennials don't want to talk to people on the phone, but um I don't know if it's even that. It's just
Oh no,
you get
well,
kind of nervous not wanting to talk to someone sometimes, and maybe they'll say something I don't want to hear. Or, I don't know.
no, you make a lot of arrangements through email, and then
Yeah.
you end up, or we go to trade shows sometimes, and we end up establishing relationships with people, and then we talk to them later. So,
Okay.
for example, we went to a design trade show for the medical field. We had a
Okay.
client made furniture, and they were sort of saying, "Hey, we've got little bits of orders here and there. Why are they buying our furniture? And what are they buying it for?" Well, it turned out that, like, one of the things they were buying it for, they had these nice chairs you could hang on the wall.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're trying to utilize your space better, but you don't know how many people are going to come in to the
Ah.
room, well, then you want to have extra seating. So
Right.
that's an example where they didn't know why
Right.
these products were being bought, and they went, "Oh yeah, now I see," because they were
Yeah.
mostly selling in hospitality, like restaurants,
Right.
et cetera, where you want some extra seating that could maybe hang on a wall, but it wasn't as important in restaurants as it turned out to be in medical
Interesting.
facilities.
Yeah. So like they had a whole nother marketplace to explore and to grow.
Yes.
And thankfully they recognize a couple oddities, like the oddballs of like, why would someone in a doctor's office or, you know, urgent care be buying our restaurant chairs? I could even see
Yeah.
them calling it like your restaurant chair thing. And yet some smart person over there on the medical side was like, oh, actually this would be perfect for us. And it's so true. Like your customers may tell you the next marketplace to be in, you know?
You'd see, like, a lot of these
Yeah.
chairs bought in areas with a lot of communities that tend to bring their families along.
Right.
either because they're interpreting or that's just the way that communities are. So you have to like, okay, it's not just like every hospital is going to buy extra chairs, every doctor's office. You have to see where there's a premium on space
Right.
and there's a community that's going to want that. And they were like, oh, so there's an example. It's now that when you ask me, I go, huh? But now I think about
Yeah.
that, and there's a good example of where you weren't sure why they were being bought, but it
Right.
was because of extra family and friends that were coming along and a tightness on space.
Right. It's like a
Yes.
mystery. You've solved a mystery.
Yeah, I've solved the mysteries. So we go, okay, so if you think about this doctor's office and they're affiliated with this hospital, why aren't you going to go talk to the rest of the hospital and say, hey, Dr. Smith bought our chairs. He likes them.
Yeah.
And then you're picking up orders all over,
Right.
that hospital.
The next thing you know, you're at the HIMSS medical convention selling your chairs to everyone.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Kill
there's
it.
an example where you need to ask the customers, and they just didn't have time to do it.
Okay.
So we did it. We just called up and talked to these people and say, I see you bought this. Why did you buy it? Well, it was the only thing on the market that was like that, or it was the best priced folding chair that you could just hang on the wall.
Right.
So it's not just, most of my clients are in technology, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So you can say that.
Yeah. And that's a more practical example where you can actually sit on it. Here's a story
Yes.
you can sit on.
Yeah.
Oh man. So that it sounds like that's the interview. We're picking 10 and 10. We've got these questions. We're asking about the process. It's not a survey. And anyone that says
Exactly.
so is selling something, right? This is a conversation.
Exactly. You got it.
You've done this a lot. Your team does this a lot. Any tips for someone? They're like, okay, I'm going to try to do this myself. I want to go call them.
You're just saying, can I have a few minutes of your time just
Okay.
to ask about the decision so I can understand it better?
Yep.
Particularly if you're from the company. We want to respond better to companies like you. So we'd really like to understand,
Yeah.
what happened. So customers like that. Now I have another great story for you. I know this
Yeah.
guy
Yeah.
named
Yeah.
Neil, and he was working with a client and he did some customer interviews as part of
Okay.
that. They had a customer where everything went wrong. The order got screwed up. It
Oh
was
no.
there late. They were screaming at each other.
Ugh.
A few days later, Neil called him up and said, look, you're like the worst that can ever happen. My client says, this is like so bad, and we want to understand it
Right.
because we want to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. We know there were multiple things went wrong. We want to hear, tell me.
Yeah.
Okay, so Neil listened, took it back, and you know what? That very unhappy customer placed another order.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Did
another
they
100.
just feel heard, listened to, and
They
they just
feel heard, and they
yeah.
said, we've been heard, and you know what? They want to fix these problems, and they have a good product overall. So we're going to trust them to
Right.
do it right.
Wow.
So I'm not saying that's going to happen here. We're not looking to turn around any customers, but I'm just saying that this is a very powerful message to customers. We want to understand you better so
Right.
we can serve you better.
Right.
And that's your basic message. Do you have a few minutes? When is it convenient? Just want to ask, nothing proprietary. I mean, we're not trying to get anything confidential,
Yeah.
but
And
we,
not the salesperson that sold it.
no.
Maybe the marketing person that's involved.
Yep.
Someone who can relate, like you said, you can relate to the buyer as well. So when
Yep.
they throw out some nuances, you're picking up on them because you're in the same industry, hopefully,
Yes.
or you're just good at
Yes.
listening. Okay.
So what I do is I get my interviewers, or you could have that person, because there are tone of voice. So much of what we communicate, remember, is nonverbal,
Right.
or it's not just the words. Even over the telephone, I'll get questions like, well, was that said sarcastically? When I was in
Good point.
sales,
Yeah.
one of my customers would look at me and say, that little problem we had, was that a feature or a bug? I'm like, okay, I get it. It's like, so then you I
Geez.
just knew that was sarcasm,
Right.
and, so you get that tone of voice,
Right.
kind of context, and that's what an interview does for you. You
Right.
get that context, that tone of voice. Um, we
So
have done.
if you're not recording, like you said, because sometimes it makes people nervous, um, you don't want to do it illegally. You don't want to wiretap your customers. But if you're not recording, it's important to note the answer, but then also to your point that the feeling associated with the context.
Yes,
What do? Do you just put like the note and then sarcastic, or do you have like a
yeah, we have some notes.
courtroom recorder listening in?
Yeah, we try to, you know, um, make notes of things like that. Now, I
Right.
once did a program um, where half the interviews were in person, and we were trying to understand. The
Cool.
client wanted to understand: is it better to do it in person or better to do
Oh,
it on phone? Now, it
okay.
takes a lot more to do it in person
Oh
because we were
yeah.
going all over the country. I went and I
Oh
talked to
really?
somebody.
You like flew to the office? Hell yeah, company. That's a baller move. I'm sure they're paying a lot more for that too. That's crazy.
They
That's
were
awesome.
paying a lot more.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, so I flew actually to Springfield, Missouri. Now, you don't think about that. The guy said, "You were willing to come here. Nobody else comes here."
Yeah.
Actually, that's that's right near Branson.
Yeah, I know.
So
Yeah. I was gonna say, did you go catch a show?
no, I had to, my schedule
Yeah.
was too busy.
Yeah.
But that's like, but people don't fly. I mean, that is such a big area for tourism. But people who want interviews like this, who want to talk about business, they don't go through Branson. So this was like, okay, I'll talk to you because you're willing to fly here. So for that,
Right.
we found a lot of similarities between the people who chose the client and the people who chose the competitor. But one thing we picked up from the personal interviews was that the people who chose the client were older. We could kind of
You
see
could
that.
see them.
Yes. You get a feel from looking at LinkedIn and how um, and what their career path has been,
Right.
and you also get
Older, more experienced.
yeah, versus
Interesting.
kind of younger. You also get a feel for
Interesting.
by names. I mean, we all
Sure.
know, particularly for women, if they're named Ashley, they're this age. If they're named Susan, I hate to say that, but
Sure.
that kind of thing. But I'm just saying that that was something that we found through personal interviews. But
Yeah.
otherwise, we heard about we got the same kind of message. So I'm not
What?
sure it's really worthwhile, but that's a question
Right.
that people have.
Right. I wonder what you do with information like that too, because obviously you want to make it actionable, or maybe just
Okay.
noting that they're
Oh
older.
no, we're making it.
Do you like
Sorry, I
ask on a
forgot to turn
form?
it off.
Oh, no worries. You ask on a form. It just makes it more realistic. But like
Um,
on a form, how old are you?
yeah.
If you're 40 plus, you're more likely to buy with us. The lead grade goes up. Like, how did they use that?
What they used it for was to change your advertising.
Huh.
So they're advertising. So then they took a look at that competitor's advertising versus theirs, and
Yeah.
clear message. It was faster paced. It was jazzy. It was um, appealing to a younger demographic. They could see that,
Yeah.
and then they also saw that the message was, don't choose one of the established players. You know, don't be ordinary. Take a risk. We're worth it. Make a name for yourself by choosing the up and comer. So there was also a message as well as the context of the speed
Were
and the
they the up and comer, or did
no, my client was the established.
was established? So
They were
they
competing against an up and comer.
right. And so the people they were talking to, that up and comer stuff didn't resonate with them as much as like this is the tried true.
Exactly. But when you saw that the competitors buyers were younger, it was appealing to them. So the point, yeah, all these programs should be
Right.
done with the idea you're going to take action. And the
Yes.
action in this case was to revise the advertising and the messages to appeal to a younger demographic without totally losing their existing demographic,
Right. Uh,
because they had to get those younger buyers or they were going to be locked out.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's just an example of a very specific program that illustrates a couple points. So in general, I don't recommend that clients go in person unless there's like a trade show and it's easy to go talk to a bunch of people. But there is possibility of more information
So
from an in-person
there's a
view.
little more information. I don't know. Like when I heard you talking about it, I was like, here's my client list. Go say hi. Because I know I got a little nervous because I would love to talk to them, but would I be biased and would I jump to assumptions or,
You should go talk to them. This is
I
not
want to.
in lieu of you going to talk to them, because you could talk more about, well, I want to hear
Yeah,
what
good
you want to
call.
do that I can do for you in the future. So your conversations are much more future oriented, I would guess.
Right. Yeah,
How's
oh
it
yeah,
going?
for sure.
You know,
Yeah, this is where I
how
want you to be. I want you to be. We want to help you get
yes,
over to this point. This is where you should be, and here's the steps to get there, and that kind of thing.
we're more establishing that, baseline decision for
Yeah.
you. And then you're going to go off and talk to them and say, how can we work together in the future?
Yeah. I
So
like
that's,
that. We should do a road trip together
yeah,
where you meet them first and figure out why we're even talking in the first place. And then I'll come
yeah,
in and I'll give them the dreams of the future and talk to them about the steps they need to take to get there.
exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly. It's a different function. So
Different
I'm not saying
conversation. Yeah.
don't go, this is not to say don't have somebody from your organization go talk to them. That's important, but it's a different kind of conversation. We're
Different
providing
kind
that
of
baseline
conversation.
and you build on it when you go talk to people.
Right, right. And it almost sounds like it needs that. I mean, you've got that sort of Sherlocky Holmes type inquisitive mystery solving, whereas I might have missed a little detail. The fingerprint on the lampshade, I missed it. Well,
Yes.
I'm looking at the bright lights over there across the street. So it needs
Yeah.
the right person who's thinking about what are these the tone changes, the things that are unsaid about someone. Makes a lot of sense to have someone listening like that.
We're information junkies.
Yeah.
We get off a phone call and say, wow, that was great. I really understood why they made that decision. I mean, we like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're that kind of people, analytic, and so I can go, hey, this is why they did that.
Analytic, but you're
It's,
still easy to talk to,
yeah.
which I
Oh,
think
yeah.
helps. Otherwise, talking to a robot,
Oh, no, no, no.
yeah,
You,
that
you
wouldn't
got
work.
to have people who get on the phone and want to talk and want to listen. So then I can get back to you and say, hey, Casey, your customers say X, this,
Yeah.
and it's really, then you can go from there and talk about what else you could do for them
Right. Right.
because you got that basic understanding.
That's really cool. I'm wondering, we talked about action oriented earlier. Do you have any tips or approaches you've just completed the conversation. Maybe you've completed all 10. How do you then take the the transcripts or the takeaways from that, and do you help them shape that into action? Do you have any ways that you go about doing that?
Well, we do, the analysis. I mean, you get kind of a
Yeah.
transcript that is as much as we can. So you can look at the nuances of the conversation, but we also analyze it so that you can see that, you know, uh, most of your customers said they really liked the way, your product was installed, you
Right.
know. So it was really easy to install, so it was up and running quickly.
Mm.
So then you say, okay, is that something we emphasize in our message? And then, of course, those product features, if you're going to be going after leads, do you have the right fit for those leads? I just remember because a couple of times this whole international language has come up. I mean, most software is in English, and most of the time that's fine.
Right.
But every once in a while, you need accounting, or you need foreign exchange, or you need
Yeah.
foreign language. Those things about being U.S. versus being global. So you do need that. You obviously need most software needs to be integrated in with the basic CRM systems. So
Sure.
that's obviously a question too. Everybody does Salesforce, but do you do any of the others? So those are the kinds of things where you should look at it, your leads, and say, if we only work well with Salesforce and this prospect doesn't have Salesforce, should we be there at all?
Agreed.
So that's one of the things that you're giving more of a roadmap to marketing and sales. So that's one of the action items.
Right.
Trying to say, here's your best prospects. here's the messages you should be putting out. So I'm helping them do battle cards, basically.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Of,
Battle cards. And you, as you were talking, you're like getting my mind thinking. And I've seen this on other websites, and I don't know if we do this on our. We got a brand new website, and um, I we need to make sure our forms even ask. Like, we work with people that have Pardot, right,
yes,
and
yes.
Salesforce. So if you don't have those two, Mazel tov. But like, that's not like, cool. Well,
Like, have
somebody
a good
else.
life. Yeah,
Yeah,
have a good
totally.
life. It's like,
Yeah, enjoy.
exactly. That's exactly it. And you
Right,
need to, make it clear right up front
right.
that that's what you do. Now, that's a very simple, it's very obvious, and it's
Simple
not so
questions. Yeah,
obvious
yeah.
in for some cases, or the lead forms aren't that explicit. They should be that explicit. So sometimes it's just going through kind of a bunch of things. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that?
Right,
Oh yeah. So sometimes they've got 90% of what they need on a lead form, but they've left out that qualifier.
right.
So, and then the battle cards.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then
Tell me
it's,
about that. What is a battle card? Because I've heard it and it sounds super badass.
yeah, oh, it's
But
great.
what is that
So you're
even?
taking this information about
Yeah,
what the competitors are saying to the customer,
right.
and you're saying, all right, here's what they're saying, and here's what we should be saying to the customer in response.
Right.
So if they're going in and saying, hey, Pardot is really difficult to install. Well, no, not if, then you're saying our installations tend to be, take half as long as our competitors. So
Right.
you're going in and you're saying, if you're hearing this from a prospect, it's from a competitor. So
Oh,
you can say the
alert.
prospect,
Yeah.
yeah,
Alert. This is junk from a competitor. If you hear this, this is likely where it came from. Yeah.
or it could be a valid concern, but I'm just saying
Right.
that. So you have this battle card, and you know what the competitors are saying because you've heard it from these wins and losses, and then you want to have a good response ready. So that's what your salespeople have, and you could build that in to like Salesforce if you're doing prospecting and
Right.
you're putting all that info. It's creating the content. I don't do Salesforce. I mean, I'm not a technical person. I mean, is you can have that information, those responses ready. So it's called a
Right.
battle card
Battle
because it used to
card.
be a card for the battle. But
Yes. I love that.
and so
Battle
you're
card.
yes. So again, you're making sure that the competitor doesn't define the needs and the pros and cons of each solution.
Right.
So you don't want a competitor in there saying, "Well, you really need, an interface to Oracle."
Yeah. I've definitely experienced that where there's a certain feature that I don't know if Pardot even has it now. Most like it and the big players don't have this feature. Old school platforms do. It's not even a healthy feature to have. But I recall being on some sales calls where they're saying, "Do you have this thing?" And I was like, "Okay, I know where that came from."
Exactly.
Like it,
Exactly.
but the problem is they talk to them first, so they have this in their head that they really need to get this feature because it sounds so cool. Really, they don't even need it at all, and actually they shouldn't use it ever. But
Yes.
but because it's already in their head, now you have to like deprogram them, which is way
Exactly.
harder than just sort of setting the landmine in the first place. So yeah, I've definitely
But you got
experienced
to
it.
have that exactly. But you got to have that statement ready. If you do hear that, you
Right,
have to like say, "Oh, yes, we have found that that is no longer really helpful." So you're not trying to, of course, knock it. You're not trying to say, "Oh, you're wrong, Mr. Customer." You're trying to say, "Well, things have actually changed, so you don't really need that anymore, and here's why you don't need it anymore." So you're not ever telling the customer they're wrong or the prospect they're wrong.
right,
You want to just say, let's tell them why they don't need it anymore. That's what I found
right.
the kind of way you want to approach it on a battle card. Again, I've been in sales, so I can help write those, but that's where you use this information. And that's one of the ways in which you use this information. So
Huh.
why would you have all your salespeople develop these one by one? No, you want to take your best. You want to take this information and spread it out throughout your sales force. So,
Gosh, so
yeah,
valuable. I hope I don't
ex-
sound like an infomercial for everyone, but like I'm literally selling myself on this, and then also almost like buying this for friends. Like if you really
yeah,
care about someone, They need this. You need like a I don't X $1,000 gift card that people can buy for
Yes,
their friends. Friends don't let friends market without knowing their buyers. Quote me on
exactly,
that.
exactly. And I'm
Come
passionate
on.
about it because I believe in it. I really do.
Yeah.
And I've been told that, well, you're good at this because you really understand how it can benefit. So I'm not trying to sell them something
Right.
that I don't believe in. I believe because I've seen the benefits
100%.
where I've
Yeah.
seen them change their marketing, I've seen them change their advertising, I've seen their qualify their sales leads much more carefully and the real benefits to it.
Right.
So, and you can buy them the book. Now, I have a friend who's done a lot of it, and she wrote a great book, Ellen Naylor.
Huh.
It's so that's another way you can have a reference book. You don't need me. I'm just find the yeah, here it is. Win-loss analysis. How to capture and keep the business you want.
That is
So
cool.
buy that to everybody you know for Christmas
Yeah.
or
Okay.
the holidays, whatever.
Slip a
That
little gift card for your services in there too.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. What a cool thing. And man, for step one in the CSI, just really understanding your buyer. But the fact that it's not a one and done. I mean, even coming into this conversation, I was of the one and done mindset because we haven't even really done it. So I want to do it
yes,
first time. But at the same time, great, you've established that. So now the work's a little easier. You're not completely in the dark, but keep it up the tempo. Would you say do like the 10 plus 10 every quarter?
yeah,
At least that kind of thing. Do you have people doing
yeah.
like way more? At what point is like a diminishing return? Is it
Well, you
10?
kind of see. You kind of see if it's
Okay.
maybe 10 or it's 15. You kind of say, I'm seeing the same things. Let's not
Right.
continue.
Right.
That you kind of see it. So
Right.
the thing is, I always talk first with people like you when we met. I
Yeah.
always talk about the initial program because I want to get the people to understand the benefits of doing it. And then if you go, well, you should do it every quarter, then they go, oh my God, that's like such
Yeah,
a
I know.
big
You
thing.
just
Oh
up
no,
the price on
oh no,
them.
I can't.
Yeah.
You got to see the benefits of doing it once, and then you say, keep doing it.
Dang, I love this. I'll see you in a quarter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on. Maybe we can do 5 interviews each, and that'll be enough, or we'll do 10. It depends.
Right.
So I think that's why you need to kind of get your head around doing it once, see the benefits, have people in the organization go, yeah, yeah, this is helpful, and then talk about keeping up with it.
Do you do the battle cards for people as well?
I can,
After
yeah,
that? Yeah, because I
yeah,
just think that'd be really interesting to, you take the actionable insights for marketing, and then also you have these battle cards for the sales side, and how they can
yeah,
address different things, or just FYI sales. Here,
yeah, yeah,
because sometimes we get siloed where marketing does a project and then they don't tell the rest of the organization or vice versa. So just getting the information out there, to everyone.
exactly. I mean, I've talked to salespeople, trained salespeople, but it
Yeah,
really depends on what the client wants. Do they want me to do just the external piece, and then I'll sit down with their marketing people and they'll write the battle cards? It's fine
right.
with me. I'm just saying you need
Just
this
do it.
information.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
this
just
thing. However I can help, great. That's what I'm picking up.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I'm not coming in and saying, "I'll do it all for you." No, no, no. I want to just provide what they need,
But
and
that
they don't.
sounds tempting too.
Yeah, but also, like I say,
Yeah.
they could do some of. I had one client where I did the losses and they did the wins.
Oh, that's smart. That's
Yeah.
smart.
Well, if they were a little budget constrained, then, and so, but what we did do is sit down and we agreed on a set of questions.
Yeah.
So when they were bringing their new clients on, they included that set of questions so you could compare them.
Yep.
And then I went off and did the losses.
Yeah.
So then you had a total program for not a lot of budget,
Right.
not as much budget. Although, again, you have to decide what do you want to do internally and what do you want to do externally. It's often just a bandwidth question.
I could even see, doing it once with you and kind of getting a sense for it. And then, you know, if I wanted to then continue, maybe do it on our own after that. Maybe we're just like, dang, just keep going. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah.
way, like, that first, I get it. That first one's kind of that, you got to get over that hump. You got to get some of this core data. But once you see it, I mean, you're having aha moments left and right as you have these conversations with people. So that's fun, so
Oh, it
let's
is.
pull
Yeah.
more fun back into marketing here.
We don't mind. I mean, that's one of the things that, we'll do. As we do it, we'll teach you how to do it.
Right.
Because you know what? Otherwise, you're just like spending more and more money outside, and then you go, "Wait a minute, I could just hire somebody to do this." And we go, "Yeah,
Totally. And it's in your
totally."
element, it's your unique ability, you're locked in, like, for sure. That it's a great decision to contemplate is whether to, use someone else but to your point, you don't need me, but dang, it sounds pretty good. So here's my question. I think I could talk to you about this all day. I'm wondering, who exactly are you? How did you come to become this buyer whisperer? A lot of the tech space as well, but take me back to little Parmelee days, or like, hey, how did what would the journey look like to get you to where you're at now?
Well, as I mentioned, I graduated from Harvard Business School, and I went to work for
Yeah.
Digital Equipment Corporation,
Okay.
which dates me, I know. Okay,
Yep.
but
Some people
tech
listening to
company.
this are like, what's that?
Yeah, I know.
Deck?
One of those companies that used to be.
Yeah.
Um, there were all the mini computer makers, and then there were all the workstation guys. All these companies that have disappeared. Although
Yeah.
I still hear from HP every once in a while because DEC was bought by Compaq, who was bought by HP. But anyway, my point is, it was like a billion-dollar startup. It was wild, but it was a lot of fun. And
Wow.
so I did a variety of jobs in there. I was in finance, I was in marketing, I was in customer finance, and I was in sales. And I did a couple of
So you like hopped
head
around.
yeah, that was what was great about the company. I got to
Oh,
see a lot of
cool.
different functions. Yeah, that was neat. So what I really liked was some of the competitive work I did. I did battle cards um, for the engineering group,
Yeah.
their systems against some other competitive systems. I really liked that analysis and that comparison. So when I left digital, I started working for a small firm that did sales lead generation. And then I heard Leonard Fold speak. He was one of the kind of the fathers of competitive intelligence. And I went, yeah, it's like, that's me. That's me. I want to
Yeah.
do that. And I worked there. Um, I started working there at doing research, and I just liked it. I'm, I'm a lot of us. It sounds odd, but we were teachers' kids. Where
Okay. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you deal in information. That's kind of our information is good. We like finding it. We like explaining it. We like thinking about it. So it's kind of a core for me. So I found that, and it just fit, and I'm really good at it
Yeah.
because I like it, and it fits what I do best, which is seeking information and putting the pieces together
Right.
and working. And because I've been in these different functions, I can work well with a lot of different functions within my clients, and I can understand
Got it.
what they need.
Got it. Now your undergrad was in economics, so I could
Yes,
see how like that would play out, the financial side or the numbers,
yes,
but this sounds like even way more human, the human side, the conversations. But is
yes.
there some kind of twist in economics in that, or
Well,
how
I
do you?
think there is,
Yeah.
in a sense that there's trends that are going to
Yeah.
affect the business, and you're going to have to think about that and
Sure.
see how companies are responding to that. And I think it makes it, we talk about, oh, we got, there's a downturn coming and we got to be careful about that. No, sometimes the companies that say there's a downturn coming and I'm going to steal everybody else's
Yeah.
market shares. See,
Get some. I love that.
yeah. So let's see, are they pulling back? So you kind of look and say, are they not investing because they're hunkering down? And maybe this is the time for me to reach out. So the
Right.
companies that act um, in in the opposite of the economic trends will
Right.
sometimes do very, very well.
Right.
I'm
If
trying
you're
to think of a
prepared
way to
for
say it.
it and you get
Yeah,
aggressive, when winter comes, because winter is coming, then
winter's always coming. We don't know when, but
yeah. But if you're prepared for it, you got your mucklucks fastened, you got some smoked salmon in the hut. You can go out
yeah,
there and start stealing some potatoes during the
yeah, whatever.
from your
You're
neighbors.
out there. You're out there. You can be out there a little bit before
Yeah.
everybody else.
Right.
You want to be a leader, not a laggard. So you
Right.
kind of look at these economic trends and you kind of say, okay, what are the signals. I mean, right now, for example, we're in a really long expansion. That doesn't mean we're going to crash tomorrow, but I think companies should be looking at what's going on and kind of looking at those leading indicators and kind of thinking about, what are my plans? You got to do some scenario planning. That's a whole nother topic, but thinking about what might happen and how am I going to plan for it,
Right.
so that you're ready for several different possibilities in terms of economic trends. So that's the big picture in which companies do this. Also, I hate to say it, but they also cut back on research
Mm.
when times are bad, and that's exactly the time when they should be spending on it,
That's a good
because
point.
you got to do more with less. Well, then
Yeah.
how do you do more with less? You spend a little bit of money to find out how you could be more effective.
Yeah, because if you're gonna tighten up your ad spend, you want to get really specific about who you're going after, really specific on where
Exactly.
you're what conferences you're going to. Yeah, we go to 80. No, no, no. You need to find out what conferences are working, but then also find out if they're working or not. But which ones should you be going after? Makes a
Exactly.
lot of sense. Yeah,
Exactly. Okay, we need to make sure that our salespeople are they got a higher win rate. We need to make sure that they can bring in the money faster.
right.
Finance loves win loss, by the way, because they usually bring in money faster.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive though, because I could see this being, unless everyone's clear on what you're getting out of this, this is not a nice to have. This is
No,
like the foundation of all of your marketing and sales efforts. Uh, it's almost like this is completing the feedback loop on all of those efforts. And you
right.
may have some numbers to show this conference or this conference, but you may not know why.
And that's a good point. You put on these questions. Which
Yeah.
conferences do you go to?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which conferences do you go to? Who do you send? Um, where do you get your information?
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
sign up for these subscription services? Which ones? Like, I've had lots of people tell me, well, we look at the Gartner, we look at the Magic Quadrants. That's how we decide who we're going to look at.
Do people actually do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, people actually, that's what they tell me, that's what they do, just as a starter point.
Sure.
So yes, there are those influencers out there. So then you say, uh-oh, we better work with Gartner more to get
Right.
ourselves in that Magic Quadrant, because we're hearing that our customers do look at that.
Do look at it.
Yeah.
And
So
they've told you themselves. And
exactly.
and you're asking, what about that, to make sure they're not just throwing out some rational explanation for the fact they love getting cookies in the mail.
Oh, I know.
Um, yeah. So that
So you
yeah.
you just
But if
need
that
to
chance goes
understand,
up.
yeah, where are they getting their information? What do they consider credible? Which trade shows? So what are they doing? So that
Right.
you can focus on what they're doing. Now, it may be that ones you lost were the ones that are going to Gartner, and then you go, oh, maybe I could have been. Well,
Yeah.
well, wait a minute. If you involved in it, are they? How did you get involved in it? So maybe it's not so important, but yet. So the one thing we're missing here is the people
Yeah.
that didn't consider you. But
Right.
maybe that's okay. If they couldn't find you at all, maybe you weren't right for them. That's
Right.
a whole nother topic. But
Right.
essentially, yeah, you need to look and see where the wins and losses are getting their information and what's influencing them. Maybe you got in there, but the Gartner imprint was a big influence. I'm not
Right.
saying it is. Usually I hear that it's a source of a list of possible solution
Yes. Yeah.
providers
It was for
rather
me
than,
too. Yeah.
yeah,
Source.
it's
Like
the
a
source.
directional
It's
source. Yeah.
a directional source. It's a place to start.
Right.
Where do you start otherwise? I mean, it's too difficult. It's a quick way to make a decision on where to start, but
Yeah.
it's not an end for the most part.
Interesting.
So that's where you can help. You can help craft a lot of other of your marketing activities based on what you hear from these customers.
Right.
Now, this is just so we find that if we get a good list from our clients,
Yeah.
that we can get in touch with about half of them. So it's not a complete view,
Okay.
but we haven't found that the ones that are not responding are radically different from the ones that are, because I say 50% is 50% of both those who made the decision for you and against you. So
Right. So,
It works
some
both
will
ways.
chat, some won't, but it sounds like it's all, if you have enough conversations, you're hearing that same, similar story or stories, different paths that are happening, and you're able to
Yep.
make that call. It makes a lot of sense. You are like you're a walking mystery novel. I could see you compiling, leave the company name off. I would read a chapter book or listen to it on Audible of like these interviews. Like every chapter is
Yes.
like a different client, and it's like, ooh, we went in knowing this, and this is what happened. I'd be like, oh no, that's so crazy. Maybe it's they're just us geeking out about buyers, but it just seems like those aha moments are so valuable if you take action on them.
Exactly. And I have had clients who said, that was a lot of great information, but I really didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, oh, because I hate it.
Mm,
It's like you give somebody a gift and they go, oh, no, I'm giving them something. I want them to use it. I really do. So,
right.
I like to try and help them, but if they're fine with taking it and running with it, fine. But I really want them to see it being used
Yeah.
because I can see what it can do for them.
Yeah.
By the way, I love mystery novels. You hit that exactly right. Because I'm like, all right, can I figure out before the end of the book who did it?
Do you usually figure it out or
Not
depends?
always.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the books are kind of designed to have that one important fact, like right near the end,
Yeah.
because they got to hook their readers and keep them reading to the end. If it's too obvious,
Yeah.
then nobody's going to buy the next one.
You
So,
know what? One of my favorite isn't necessarily a mystery novel, but it's it's about the Bobaverse. It's this like 3-part trilogy sci-fi kind of thing. And at the very end, something cool happens. And I was like, that came out of left field. Actually, it didn't. Like, 12 chapters prior, or maybe in some other book, they did plant the seed. And it took me like the second time I listened to it, because I just loved being in that universe. I was like, oh, this is that vague reference to sending people on like a mission that may or may not work, and then the very end of the book is it's working. So, but yeah, it's funny, depending on the kind of the hints they drop. Sometimes you have a good picture, or I mean, they should
yeah,
drop enough that you could guess it if you were really.
paying attention and
Yeah.
keeping it all in mind. So,
Do you
I
have any
mean,
favorites?
I read all the classics when I was younger, all the Agatha Christie. Oh,
Yeah.
and I like some of the ones there's ones about dogs.
Oh,
Oh, and
really?
then there's one about cats where the guy has a Siamese cat that helps him figure things out by
Really?
pushing certain books off
No way.
Oh, yeah. No, it's like these are for cat lovers,
Right.
The
Right.
cat who robbed a bank, the cat who had 60 whiskers. So there's whole
Interesting.
series of them, and they're really very similar. But it's like
Right.
the characters. Um, then there's another one, Janet Ivanovich, who
Hmm.
writes these. They're almost like crazy.
Really
It's about a bounty hunter who gets involved in all these crazy chases, and somebody gets killed and she's got to figure it out
interesting.
before they go after her. But it's crazy. They'll bomb her car, they'll douse
Wow.
her with water. I mean, there's all these
Yeah.
crazy things. It's not realistic, but it's fun to read.
Oh, for sure. And, but
you know
what's cool is that you're solving mysteries at work and at home. And
yes.
I remember growing up, parents, grandparents, a lot of Dick Francis books, and
Oh, yes, I read those.
guy just likes horses. So every mystery novel he writes involves a horse or a jockey or horse racing. Hey, why not? And, write about what you love. And he did, but they were actually really cool. I just remember one guy was in a desert. He woke up in a desert, and he wasn't missing a kidney, but like the car was, and you're like, "Ooh, how did you get here?" And I just remember there being some really well written books. Whether you liked
Yeah,
horses or not, it was just well written.
they
It
were
kind of
well written. Yeah,
had that consistent trend along the way.
that's right. And then as I mentioned, there's one about a dog trainer. So it
Oh yeah,
always
yeah, right,
involved dogs. It's somebody in Cambridge, Mass. So obviously, I think that the writer obviously lives in Cambridge, Mass, and has a dog,
sure,
and it's just a nice setting for the
yeah,
mystery, and of course the dogs get involved in some way,
Right.
not 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 figuring it out, but involved in some way. So it's just kind of fun to read.
Subtle way. Yeah.
Yeah, subtle way, and but then it's an excuse to talk to people.
Right.
Having a dog is always a good excuse to talk to people. So,
Yeah.
those devices go in, and you read enough of them and you see the devices, but you're still enjoying them because they're fun.
Reminds me of like Columbo. I don't know if you remember him back in the day.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
I used to I would do recruiting. I was a recruiter for a while. I kind of did what you did, where you just sort of try out different places and different organizations. And I remember being a recruiter, and my approach was always like the Columbo approach. Because I was a technical recruiter and I was hiring people. This is like high level ETL database migration stuff. But
Yep.
we had some battle cards enough to know to be dangerous of like the question and the question, and the answer to know that we could technically evaluate people. But I would ask them these questions to see if they knew the answer. But I would always kind of be more Columbo. He was so like off-putting. A lot of people thought he was dumb, and that he didn't really know what he was doing. But in the end, there'd be this little twinkle, and suddenly he just solved the case. You're like people like sort of dropped their guard a little bit and were real
Exactly.
around him, and then he got the real answer. So I did a little bit of that with recruiting. When people said some BS answer to some technical question, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Like, X.
Next. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. I used to
Yeah.
watch those Murder She Wrote.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Angela.
Angela Lansbury. And it was like she was just this little old lady that
Yep.
was just being polite, and
Yeah,
yeah, and then it's like, but so that was so that was kind of fun. And
totally.
she had the bumbling nephew, and I remember several programs where he kind of bumbled into murders and
Oh,
was
geez.
accused, and she had to rescue him. I mean, so there was a little human interest there too.
Right. Yeah, I don't
But
remember the cousin, but I do remember her. And recently, the kids, we watched Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. I know the old school Disney movie. Angela Lansbury, she looks fantastic. I don't know if she was in
yeah,
her 30s or 40s or whatever. I mean, she's like timeless. But
yes, she is.
yeah, and she was like the heroine. She was a witch back in that
Oh
movie.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
she's a good actress. I'm just saying
really good actress.
that's
Yeah.
I think of her as that's she's Murder She Wrote for me
Oh,
because
totally,
but she's
totally.
generally good actress. But that's what I do for kind of relaxation, where I don't have to be like catching every nuance. I can just kind of relax and enjoy it and try and guess. And if I can't guess, there's no big deal.
True. You don't have to write a report on the things you've learned for this particular client because it's in a book.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, but that's who I am, and that's what I enjoy
Right.
doing. So
That's
I'm
so
happy.
cool.
Yeah, happy to have found something that I really like. That's what I tell people do. Follow your passion, find out what you like to do, and do it.
Right. And do it.
So that's
And
like totally different from what we started off talking about. But
yeah, it's important though. Like you have a unique ability, you have a passion for this. It's an interesting, exciting, a little bit scary because you're like, am we gonna solve this?
yeah,
And
every
yeah,
project, every new project is like, oh, is this one going to go okay? You always wonder.
right. It always does, but it's that energy and excitement of how's this gonna work out. I feel a little bit like that with podcasts too.
Yeah,
How's this
exactly.
podcast gonna work out? Which, by the way, this has been awesome. I don't know if you've even seen the clock, but like time, we've been like this little buyer time warp just now.
Yeah, I just noticed the time. I've really just enjoyed talking about it. I
Yeah,
mean, I love this stuff, and to have somebody asking me questions about it and I can just talk about it, I love it.
totally. And I'm over here learning, and I've got like two pieces of paper, you know,
Yeah.
front and back here. Just so this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming here.
Oh
Can you
no.
share like links and how people can contact you and where we need to go? And what we'll do is we'll also put them in the show notes for people to click on.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn,
Okay.
and you can just the easiest um, email is just eastside@verizon.net because it's like nice and short. I mean, I have all the professional ones, but yeah, let's just cut to the chase and use eastside, EASTSIGHT at verizon.net.
Boom.
And then, or look at me on LinkedIn. Um, and I'm happy to send people, more information about win loss, or show them where some of the 30% returns have, have come from, where that's
Yeah.
documented, because it's been a number of times that people have looked at it and said, "Yep, this makes sense."
Right. Or
Although
even
we
that
did,
client that, that they saved just by having a conversation with, that probably paid for the whole thing anyways.
yeah, yeah, we just lost a bid, by the way, on a win-loss program when using the 30%, and our competitors used a higher return.
Really.
We were just trying to be conservative. We'd rather say 30%, and then if it's 40%, you're going, "Wow, that's great."
Right. And not BS people. Now, is that really why they went? Is because you said 30%? Did you do
That
like a win loss on them? Do I need
we
to do the phone call for you, or were you able to do it?
we did it, and that wasn't the only reason, but they did mention that as one of the factors, and we were like,
Dang
"Really?
it.
Really?" Because that's like we'd always, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good return. So I just mentioned that as kind of a, hey, I'm talking about 30% because it's like, hey, I know I could do it.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like in my head, when I heard return, I heard like out of 100, I'm going to get 30 back. And I'm like, oh, but then when we talked about it, I realized actually my stuff's going to increase by 30%. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
my company's now a third bigger size than it was before. So that makes sense, but that's cool. You doing, using your own thing and doing your own research but don't fall into the BS trap either. Yeah. Those
No,
people
I'm
are
not
out
going to.
there, you don't want that client either. If they're going to, somebody else is like, hey, we do 300%. You're like, okay, great. So you're the client that falls for BS and is cranky afterward when you don't get it.
Exactly. No, no, no. I
Yeah,
want a good long-term relationship.
totally.
You got to
Totally.
have a good working relationship. That's what I like. And they
100%.
like too. Great. Hey, this is wonderful. I can't believe we've used up all this time.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
This has
I've
been
really
fun.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you back on here at the end of the year. We're going to talk about marketing planning. And I love that, we almost got into it, but I held off the idea of planning for the possibilities and the trends and,
Yeah.
kind of bring in some of your economics and your wisdom there. So maybe we'll chat later on this year and just talk about planning for marketing.
Great. No, I'd
Awesome.
love to.
Well,
Love
good
to.
deal. Well, again, thank you so much. And, for everyone listening, if you learned something here, and there's no way you didn't, because I did, and I've been
Yeah.
taking notes and being polite and actually having conversations. So you should have double the notes that I do. If you've learned anything, make sure you share this, subscribe and then share this episode with someone else so that they get the message too. This is so important, that foundation of all the marketing you do. Don't you want it to be effective? This is how we do it. So I'm so glad to have learned this. And so make sure you share this with everyone else. And yeah, this has been awesome. So we will catch you all next time. This has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We'll see you.